Class, we are going to discuss today about subject Introduction to Architecture. Before that, I wish you all safety, security, and good health. In the first lectures, we will discuss about what actually architecture is and what are important features related to architecture. Let's commence with the lecture of week number 9, that is Introduction to Architecture and the Architect. The presentation scheme will go this way. We will start with the introduction that defines architecture in different ways. Then we will discuss about the etymology of the word architecture, its origin, and how architecture is related with natural forms, man-made forms, and ultimately shifted to architecture artifacts. Then we discuss about that architecture acts as an identity to many buildings, cities, and countries. Afterwards, we will go towards the significance of architecture, how important architecture is, and what are its effects on the society. Then we will discuss about the fundamental parameters of architecture, and finally we discuss about the scope of architecture. So let's commence the lecture with definitions of architecture. Introduction. Definition of architecture. The first definition of architecture is that how architecture could be basically defined as the art and science of designing and constructing buildings. The first definition shows that architecture is not a mere art, and similarly architecture is not mere science, but it is actually amalgamation of the two, the art and the science. So architecture is not a simple business, but it is a complex things to understand. The another definition of defining architecture is that it is both the process as well as the product. Process of planning, designing, and constructing buildings, or the process of providing your creative ideas to the people, and how ultimately those creative ideas will be materialized in the form of resultant product. So architecture is the way that will help you to materialize your ideas into physical form, that will assist you to provide your ideas in the form of physical touchable forms, in the form of tangible buildings. As the word architecture can carry several other meanings, we will further discuss about the definition number 1. That includes that architecture is the art and science of designing and erecting buildings. The several meanings include the first one, the art. How architecture is actually art. Architecture is the result of architectural process, and here process weighs a lot. And through this process, we find a product. What is the product of architectural design? It could be buildings. It could be number of buildings in the form of urban areas or cities, or it could be a landscape area. So the building alone is not only architecture, but a building with its surroundings could be the product of the architectural process. Then we discussed that architecture is the science. How architecture becomes science. It's a style or it's a method of building characteristic of our people, place and time. So when we erect a building, the building is related to the people. Which type of people are using the building? A school building has a different function, but a mosque has a different. Which timeline in this the building is actually standing in? Previously, we find cave structures in history of architecture. We find single-story residences in history of architecture, and today we find multi-story apartment residences. So, architectural science is very much about the time, place, and demand of people. designing any building. Giving an aesthetically pleasing, habitable environment to any building is the designing of it. And then the conscious effort to materialize the building form. The conscious act of forming things resulting in a unified and coherent structure. By this, by this process, they actually formulate the building. Continuing with the several other meanings, in its most simple form, we can define architecture as the design and organization of spaces. Organization of spaces includes we need a different space organization for a restaurant, for for its use, for its purpose. But we need a totally different organization of spaces in the kitchen, in the bathroom. We need a different organization of spaces for houses. We need a different organization of spaces in the industries, in the hospitals. And in its most common form, it is the design of buildings, their interiors, and their surrounding spaces. So, we can simply say that architecture is the design and organization of spaces in its most common form. It is the design of building, within which includes its interiors and its surrounding spaces. The scale of working of architects. It could be as mega as building a city, or it could be as minute as building a small unit, apartment, or a small house. So, architects can work in a wide range of scales, from planning a city up to designing a small, cheery one. The etymology of the word architecture. The etymology of the word architecture, in terms of the root of the word architecture comes from the Greek word architecton. It is amalgamation of the word archi and tecton. Archi and tecton. The word archi means cheese. The word archi means chief or master, and the word tecton stands for mason or a builder. So combining the word architecton, we can say it is also known as master builder or a chief mason. In line with the etymology, architecture used to denote both the process, the design process that helps to evolve the building, and ultimately to materialize as a resultant product in its physical form and constructing the buildings. The architect used to be also known as master mason or master builder in the past. Origin of architecture. Architecture is one of the oldest professions in human history because it helps to shelter a human being. It provides you with the basic necessity of life. It provides you protection from exterior weather, from danger outside. It gives you privacy. It appeared with human beings' need of shelter to protect themselves from severe climatic conditions. Rather, it's too hot or whether it is too cold. The danger from outside. The danger from outside animals. The danger from wars. The danger from thieves. So, architecture is the profession that is very much closely related to the human psychology that initiates the need of shelter and protection. It first evolves as the outcome of need. So, architecture is a need-based profession like shelter, security, worship. It means like the available building materials and skills. The historical buildings are the buildings of the prehistoric architecture or the buildings of the Early human beings mostly constructed with the available building materials where the people are residing in, and they use the skills they actually know. As human culture progressed, building became a craft, and later the formalized version of that craft, which is practiced by educated professionals. The professionals are known as architects, and the field is known as architecture. These are some of the initial man-made structures. The view includes the tent structure and a conical flask-like structure. The first image shows the primitive Mary shelter at New Zealand, while the other image shows the shelter of Chumash in Indiana, USA. So, architecture having its roots with the natural form as well as with the man-made form. So, let's discuss about that. One of the famous architects, Louis Kahn, says that architecture is what nature can't make. It means that architecture is a man-made creation. Architecture is although made of human being but not created by the nature, but its creator is a man, a small-scale creation. Indeed, human beings are one of the few animals that can build buildings. Structures that some animals build, such as some birds, bees, or white ant nests, indeed resembles our building in terms of their structural economy. It means that natural form or natural habitats built by the animals are acting as an inspiration for man to build his habitat. There are few examples related to natural forms or structures built by different animals. A certain bird in South America, Rufous breasted swinetail, builds a two-room nest. We are mainly familiar with a one-room nest or a sparrow nest, but the Rufous nest is a two-room nest, combining two functions together, combining two elements together or two rooms together. These rooms are then tied up to each other by a tube-like structure. Just like we connect our two rooms with a corridor or we connect our two rooms with a lobby. Or a white blind ants build structures out of mud on the ground. They build a typically high conical-like structures on the mud. Then the sea mollusk, Natalis, builds a shell. The sea mollusk Natalis builds a shell around itself out of calcium carbonate. With the passage of time, as it grows, the Natalis adds a new and bigger volume to its shell, and the small empty part of the shell is filled with the help of nitrogen. It gives the shell the quality of floating in the water. These older parts of the shell are left as the record for the heritage of the animal history. So the historical record is always important. It gives your identity. It gives you your roots. All three examples of these natural forms of habitats leads us towards the conclusion that man has taken inspiration of constructing its habitat from the nature. And all these three examples also shows that these natural forms has constructed according to their context, according to their surroundings. For instance, a desert-like area requires a different type of residential construction than an area with a snow, or an area with a hilly area, or an area with a flat topography. One of them is constructing on a tree, the other one is constructed on the ground, and the third one is constructed in the water. These are the views of the nest of Rufous in South America in left, while on the right side we find a white ant nest in Africa over the mud. And the third example is the Nautilus shell under the water. So let's discuss that how architecture is actually identity. our experience and knowledge develops, and as the cultural and environmental circumstances change, we change and we evolve. We evolve our architectural environment. But if we want to protect our identity, the protection of identity, we should take optimum care in protecting the shell of our past. We need to protect our history. We need to learn from our history. We need to understand our roots. We need to understand the fundamental principles of nature. We need to learn the lesson and implement a better impact in the future. Because that shell, the analogy of shell is here with the architecture of our past is the physical record of our lives, our successes, our aspirations. It is the cultural heritage that is led to us. So it's time for you to ponder about these images. It is said that architecture is the index of any society. So the picture one, first you see what comes into your mind. It's a mosque. The number one thing is a mosque. So it belongs to a Muslim community. Then it's not a typical mosque plan. It's a contemporary mosque having a modern style. So it is leading you towards a timeline, current scenario, current modern life. Then whenever we see this mosque, the first thing comes into the mind is the name of the place where it exists. The capital city of the Pakistan, Islamabad. The second one is the monumental building. So once we see what we find, the location, Lahore. The second thing, its timeline. It's in the memory of specific event. So it shows that the architectural buildings not only identify a specific timeline, not only identify the location where they are located, they act as a symbol for any city. If we want to know about any city, we mostly name a significant building and even a layman get to know the location of that place. To identify any city, mostly we find a picture of the famous building. So it identifies that which type of society. It's mirror image of the society. A modern society, a historic society. Let's identify the buildings. Once again, Taj Mahal, the timeline, Mughal era, magnificence of Mughal era. Place, Agra, the style, traditional, bringing us back to the roundabout in 19th century. The other building, it's Sydney Opera House, the timeline, contemporary timeline, modern building, location, famous city of Australia, Sydney. So I hope so you can relate that architecture actually is not only index of society, but it also identify to help us identify people, place, and time. These are some of the views of historical buildings. One is the Taj Mahal, Agra, and the other one is the Parthenon in ancient Greece, made to honor it's a religious temple building in ownership of and giving honor in ownership of Greeks and giving honor to the Greek goddess Athena. Significance of architecture. Therefore, architecture is an unavoidable art. You can't avoid it. Even if you don't want to notice it, you can't avoid it. We can avoid it and not see the other arts one way or another. For example, if you like a painting, you want to see it. If you don't like it, if you're not interested, you're not saying it's not impacting your life at all. If you like a sculpture, then explore exploring it. But if you don't want, it will not affect your life. But what about architecture? You like it or not? You went to your school building. You like it or not? You have to come to your classroom. You like it or not? You notice a mosque. It affects us and shapes our behavior all time as we live in and around. For instance, horizontal residences, vertical residences. It shapes your attitude in living in any space. So initially, we shape our buildings, but thereafter they shape us. We can explain it in a way that initially we create an idea. Through design process, we get to the ultimate product that is building. So we shape it. We shape the building. But after that, what happens? It shapes us. It shapes us our living attitude. This is the quotation by Winston Churchill, the former American president. These are also one of the significant buildings, historical buildings from Egypt. The huge, massive scale. The other one is the Suleimani Mosque from the Ottoman Empire, this interior view, and it is built by the famous architect of Turkey, Sinan, Mimar Sinan. Even modern buildings are incorporating nature. This is the building built by the famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright. The building is constructed on a falling water. You can directly, the building is not having the view of falling water, but building is actually constructed over the falling water side. The other one is a room. A room with the dark colors give a comparatively warm feeling, but a room with the cool colors give you a feeling of the coolness. So it impacts your mood. It is actually thereafter shaping your environment. However, it is not just an art. Architecture deals with the form and gives very much importance to how that form looks. But it also deals with the function and how that function affects the form. In architecture, there is a very famous saying, form follows functions or function follows form. What does it mean? The function means objective of the building, purpose of the building, aim of the building, why building is constructed, what is the actual use of the building. For instance, we have already discussed that your college building has a different function, your house building has a very other different function, your restaurants are having other functions. So these functions are affecting your behavior. You go to their places and perform certain activities. But in appearance, here form relates to the 3D physical appearance of the building. How actually the exterior of the building appears on the surface. So the use of the building has a very close relationship with the form of the building, the 3D appearance of the building, physical form of the building. This is what differentiates the artworks, such as sculpture from architecture. The art having just a physical form, but architecture is having a purpose. Architecture is having a use, and that use is significantly having a strong relationship with its physical appearance. Architects think also of other things such as function, the structure, next to form, that how actually that physical structure is constituted, how it is going to be erected. It doesn't mean they are erecting the building. It means that they know the basics of erection of the building. And definitely the most significant part, the beauty and aesthetics, the expression, the long-lasting impact the physical appearance of the building is leaving on its users as well as on the passersby. Moreover, art does not have to be beautiful. It should be useful as well. Art expresses the sensations, feelings, emotions of the artist through the forms. He chooses with or without purpose or beauty. Architecture is not as that free. let's discuss about some fundamental definitions of architecture or fundamental introduction of architecture. The earliest surviving written work on architecture is by one of the Roman architects, Marcus Vitruvius. In his book De Architectura, translated as 10 Books on Architecture, was written in the early 1st century AD. Vitruvius has written in his book that a good building must satisfy three main qualities. Number one is firmitas, number two is utilitas, and number three is venustas. When we translate this, it refers to the firmitas refers to the soundness of the building. How firm is the building? How strong is the building? How long lasting is the building? The second term is the utilitas. The utility of the building. How useful is the building? Is that the interior spaces of the building are comfortable for its users? How well the building is performing with reference to its interior functions, interior spaces. Then the third point, venustas. The attractiveness of the building. How attractive is the building? How aesthetically pleasing is the building? How it attracts its users? How it attracts the nearby people? How it stands as a piece of art in any surrounding area. So the attraction, the beauty of the building is all. These three are the major pillars of any architecture, building, construction. Whenever we design a building, these three parameters, firmitas, utilitas, and venustas, are the major, most important and significant parameters that should be considered in designing and erecting any building. Referring to the firmitas is actually the firmness, utilitas is the function, and venustas is the beauty. So Vitruvius denoted that a good building should be firm, useful, and beautiful, and that architect should strive to fulfill each of these qualities as well as is conveniently possible. Fundamental definitions of architecture. We have initially defined in our first definition that architecture is the amalgamation of art and science, but it is also very much related with the humanity. So how architecture is art? Architecture is art. Architecture is beauty. So when we discuss Vitruvius' three pillars or three significant points of architecture definition, the first one was venustas, which is directly related to art, which is related to the beauty of the building. The second thing we discuss about the firmness, firmitas. How durable is the building? How long building could sustain external harsh conditions, rather in the form of earthquakes, or rather it can be in the form of severe weather conditions. So the building should be durable. The building is not built for a one day, but at least an average building having a life more than 60 to 70 years, even 100 years. And then the humanities part. The humanities part includes to the utilitas. It refers to the user, the use of the building, the purpose of the building, and how well it is accomplishing or how well it is performing the real function of the building. So if you want to test any piece of architecture, these are the few points that can help you to ultimately test a piece of architecture. You can question following aspects about any particular building you want to test. The first one is that building functional? What does it mean? It means how effectively it is used, how easily it could fulfill its purpose. The second question relates to the firmness of the building. Is the building firm? Is the building strong enough to carry all the weights? You are far more better well aware with the dead loads and live loads. So, would it be able to carry all those loads? It should carry such as its own weight. Talking about the dead load, its users' weights, the furniture over there, and the forces of the wind and earthquake, the seismic loads. And are there its material durable? Is their material durable enough to withstand the forces of weather or external conditions for many years? As building is built for a long period of time. Even it stands through centuries. Just like we can see Mughal buildings, we can see pyramids, and we can see many other buildings that are standing through the course of different centuries. Is that building aesthetically pleasing? Is that building beautiful? Does the building give you visual delight? Do you feel that building is aesthetically pleasing? It attracts you. For instance, if you want to visit any restaurant, the first thing you find is to see the building, how appealing it is. Do it attracts you? Do it attracts the user and the viewer? So we are comparatively in talking about the building. Now we are talking building along with its surrounding, building within its context. For example, a building in a hilly area definitely have a different context, but a building in an Iceland having a different surrounding. So we need to prepare the building according to its purpose. The building in a desert area should provide protection from the summer. The building, like igloos, should provide protection from the cold. So the building should fulfill its function, not only with reference to use, but also with reference to its context. The space in the surrounding of the building. For instance, any landscape area, swimming pool area, or the interior spaces within the building. How the interior spaces and interior functions within the building collaborate with one another. For instance, kitchen has a very strong relationship with the dining area. The drawing room has a relationship with the dining area. Living room is the heart of the any residential house. Then definitely the form of the building, the exterior appearance of the building should be attractive. It should not only aesthetically pleasing alone, but it should also fits well in its context, fits well in its surrounding. Then what is the technique we are using? What is the method and type of construction we are using? In Lahore, mostly common material of construction is brick, and the technique of construction is load-bearing structures for residential structures. But in Karachi, common material of construction is concrete, and buildings are not single-story or double-story residential houses, but they are multi-story apartments. And definitely, they are using the technique of construction, column beam structures. The scope of architecture. As the etymology indicates, the architect has to act as the master builder, master of his working, and see the building not only both as an object of design but as a process of building. Once we create a building, once the physical form of the building is created, the function of the building is not ended there, but it keep on working, keep on performing, and the building become notorious, or the building become famous because of its functioning, because of its internal performance as well. Some of the buildings are known for their comfort, the others are notorious for not taking care of the user comfort considerations. So first of all, architecture takes place at a particular context or a site. We have briefly discussed about the site and the context in the previous slides. The site is the place where the building is erected or extended. Some of an architectural project affects and determines very important characteristics about the project, such as its layout. For instance, what will be the entrance point of the building? The orientation. The orientation mainly we define it with the north, south, east, and west. For Lahore, the best orientation for facing any building is north, and the worst orientation that should have minimum fenestration area. Fenestration area includes all the openings, windows and doors, even ventilators or any type of opening in the building is the best side. So in Lahore, whenever we are buying any plot, we should take into consideration its orientation. The best plot is the north-south facing plot or north facing plot, and the worst is the west facing plot. Similarly, the windows or the fenestration should be placed in a way that they should not orient west side. Avoid creating voids in the building from the west side and prefer them on the north and south side. The approach, how we enter towards any site or how we enter towards any building. We will find very magnificent entrances in historical buildings. You avoid to go to those restaurants, you avoid to go to those shopping malls that don't have any appropriate approach or parking space. Or a legible entrance plays a very important role in attractiveness of any building. The views a building is offering. For instance, the building has a very large lush green views from its windows, or a view of a pool from its window. The building is very much in relationship with its environment and the materials, as they are differentiated according to the climatic conditions. Secondly, the performance of the building is very much interrelated with the building services. To perform well, the building should have appropriate building services. Building services should be able to create comfortable environment for people. Architecture takes care of lighting. For instance, usually we find ambient lighting. Ambient lighting means the overall lighting in a room. But we prefer to work in task lighting. If a room is too hot or the room is not having proper acoustic conditions, the building is actually not performing well when it's not keeping your acoustic privacy. As well as the color of spaces, the texture of the materials is important. It considers how light affects and travels within the building. If the building having dark interiors, definitely the building will be not functioning well. How the building is heated or ventilated well, how it reacts to the sound, what are the colors the building should have, and the textual sensations evoked by the materials with it. After all, a completed building is a sensory experience. These are some of the views of significant buildings. Architectural production and creativity. Architectural production is a process that includes the stages of thinking, designing, and drafting. This process starts with the development of concept, development of idea. A concept is the initiating idea of the project and can be formed by the way of considering several factors such as function and site conditions of the project, a possible structural system, or the historical and cultural context of the site. This concept starts to take form by including the functions attached to it. Then this form is further shaped structurally and materially. Finally, the form is realized in 3 dimensions by taking care of the sound related issues, light related issues, and spatial considerations. Spatial considerations are related with the areas. So we can say that architectural production is a process. The process includes the stage of critical thinking, designing any area. Then the process starts with the development of concept. And afterwards, we give it the specific conditions. Architectural production and creativity is very much interrelated with one another. As other design disciplines, architecture is an act of problem resolving that requires a very critical thinking process. These problems need creativity because they do not have predetermined methods, as in mathematical formulas or theorems for their solutions. You have to explore, you have to study past examples, you have to inquire the current scenario of the site or context. These will help you resolve the existing problems in any structure. The concepts and methods for different design problems can be found by getting inspired from past architectural solutions and architects. By getting inspired from the nature, by any analogy or a metaphor, or most favorably, by total innovation of new forms and structures. Architectural creativity exists when the architectural work is both original, appropriate, and aesthetically pleasing. BASED. We can say that BASED is actually an architectural design method. It's an acronym for architectural design method. The method is primarily a means of resolving a conflict or a means of resolving a problem which exists between a logical analysis and a creative thought process. So actually, BASED will help us to bridge up the gap between a logical analysis or practical implementation of any creative idea. Here, the B stands for the briefing, A stands for analysis, S stands for the synthesis, and E stands for the evaluation, where the D stands for the design. Now we are going to discuss one by one. The B, the briefing. First of all, we have to identify a problem or define what are the obstacles we are facing. What are the basic needs or what is the site context? Then we define the list of needs required in any building design according to its site conditions. Then we analyze our program, analyze this list of conditions. Afterwards, we see the context, we find out our aims and goals,